Chapter 1 of God's Country and the Woman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. God's Country and the Woman by James Oliver Curwood. Chapter 1. Philip Weyman's buoyancy of heart was in face of the fact that he had but recently looked upon Radisson's unpleasant death, and that he was still in a country where the water flowed north. He laughed and he sang. His heart bubbled over with cheer. He talked to himself frankly and without embarrassment, asked himself questions, answered them, discussed the beauties of nature and the possibilities of storm as if there were 3 or 4 of him instead of one. At the top of the world a man becomes a multiple being, if he is white. 2 years along the rim of the Arctic had taught Philip the science by which a man may become acquainted with himself, and in moments like the present, when both his mental and physical spirits overflowed, he even went so far as to attempt poor Radisson's La Belle Marie in the Frenchman's heavy basso, something between a dog's sullen growl and the low rumble of distant thunder. It made him cough, and he laughed again, scanning the narrow sweep of the lake ahead of him. He felt like a boy, and he chuckled as he thought of the definite reason for it. For 23 months he had been like a piece of rubber stretched to a tension, sometimes almost to the snapping point. Now had come the reaction, and he was going home. Home! It was that one word that caused a shadow to flit over his face, and only once or twice had he forgotten and let it slip between his lips. At least he was returning to civilization, getting away from the everlasting drone of breaking ice and the clack-clack tongue of the Eskimo. With the stub of a pencil, Philip had figured out on a bit of paper about where he was that morning. The whalebone hut of his last Arctic camp was 800 miles due north. Fort Churchill, over Hudson's Bay, was 400 miles to the east. Fort Resolution, on Great Slave Lake, was 400 miles to the west. On his map he had drawn a heavy circle about Prince Albert, 600 miles to the south. That was the nearest line of rail. 6 days back Radisson had died after a month's struggle with that terrible thing they called Le Mort Rouge, or the Red Death. Since then Philip had pointed his canoe straight up the Dubawnt waterways, and was 120 miles nearer to civilization. He had been through these waterways twice before, and he knew that there was not a white man within 150 miles of him. And as for a white woman... Wyman stopped his paddling where there was no...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?